Assalamu alaikum. Before I begin, I'd like to thank all these women on the panel. Sharing this time with these influential, successful women is an honor in itself. All these panelists can offer different perspectives: national politics, struggle for justice on the front lines, struggle for justice behind the scenes, and many types of social activism. For example, social activism through solidarity, social activism through reflective writing. In my perspective, the start of my social activism journey was through networking, creating alliances, and coalition building. So my start on this journey was very similar to those 6 brave girls in India fighting for their right to wear hijab. Now, we've all seen that powerful image of these girls wearing masks, wearing hijab, and holding signs saying that they have a right to put a piece of fabric on their head. And I too had to fight a similar discrimination issue, the right of my daughter to wear hijab in high school. Let's face it, Islamophobia is rampant. My daughter, a teenager at that time, was going to a high school that's 98% white, and she decided in 10th grade to start wearing hijab. Now, this resulted in the expected stares and giggles and the comments under kids' breaths, but to my surprise, it also resulted in a teacher's discriminatory remarks. I reached out to the high school hoping to get an apology, but instead the school tried to ignore it. In fact, my daughter was punished. She was pulled out of class. Her grades electronically disappeared. The ones that didn't disappear magically dropped, significantly dropped. And instead of the school fighting to take a stand against Islamophobia, again, it tried to ignore it. Now, it's so amazing that just a piece of fabric can cause such an uproar. And at that time, my 6-year-old daughter, my younger daughter, stated, "Mom, because you don't wear hijab, people must understand that hijab is a right and freedom of choice. It's the freedom to wear hijab and the freedom not to wear hijab." So what can we do? I've learned 3 things from my personal experience, and I urge you all to do this locally. 1, find allies. Reach out to people, know your neighbors, your friends, diversity groups in your neighborhood, your local city and town. Find people who share the same view of the world as yourself and start networking. 2, create coalitions. Share not only your experiences, but listen to other people's experiences. Show up and stand up in solidarity, especially with other minority groups, because when you show up for them, they will also show up for you. Join protests, rallies, make phone calls, and write letters to your local politicians. Join the Justice for All email list. There's always call to action. We're always looking for people to make those phone calls to make our political figures aware of the atrocities around the world. 3, find a platform to voice your concerns and issues, a platform to educate, a platform that promotes seeing each other as human beings, and to respect not only diversity in faith, but also the diversity on how to practice your faith. In this case, let's educate the world that there is some sort of movement of fascism in India, and let's stop the Nazification of India. So these 6 girls are brave, and my prayers are with them. They have brought to light the issue that Islamophobia is worldwide. Let's face it, it's definitely present in India, and it's definitely present in the United States. It's every human's right to choose what to wear, and it's a fundamental right to choose to express your faith, obviously non-violently, and it's fundamental right to practice your faith. So let's stand by them, start locally, and if you are listening to this right now, kudos to you, you've already started on the right path, but let's continue. Find allies, create coalitions, and find a platform, or at least support a platform, to educate people about these issues around the world.
So my name is Sravya, and I represent Hindus for Human Rights, which advocates for pluralism and human rights and works to combat Hindu nationalism from a Hindu voice. And today I stand in solidarity with the Muslim girls in Karnataka who are fighting for their right to religious freedom. India is supposed to be a country where people of all faiths are treated equally under the law, but what we are seeing in Karnataka is that a sacred right held in Islam, held in Hinduism, and every other religion for women to express their faith freely, dress in the way that they choose, and pursue an education is under threat from religious extremism propagated by the state's BJP government and the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, or RSS. It can often be difficult to have conversations with Hindus about the dangers of Hindutva ideology, and I know this from my personal experience. but I want to briefly discuss 3 ways we can better communicate to American Hindus about the fascist Hindutva ideology propagated by the BJP and RSS. First, it is important to convey that the RSS is a violent Hindu supremacist group inspired by Mussolini and Hitler. It is an organization that has plotted assassinations, riots against minorities, and acts of terrorism, and it has succeeded in mobilizing mass violence against Muslims and political opponents. In 2002, the RSS and BJP organized a pogrom that led to the mass killing and rape of Muslims in Gujarat. In early 2020, RSS student and non-student attackers entered the campus of Jawaharlal Nehru University and assaulted students and faculty critical of the BJP and those of oppressed backgrounds. Late last year, we saw Hindu extremists call for a genocide of Muslims, and Amnesty International has said that this is a real risk in India. People in the West and Hindu Indians have failed to see the threat's seriousness, and this is something we must convey to those who are unaware. The second thing that we must tell our Hindu friends is that we must not only stand in solidarity with our Muslim allies, but actively fight for them, because genocides happen when the majority community remains silent. Apathy, laziness, and despondency are the best friends of oppressors. Isabel Wilkerson, in her book Caste, says that all that supremacists need from bystanders is their silent complicity in the evil committed on their behalf. The majority community must speak out and educate our friends and family, because this is the only way organizations like the BJP and RSS can lose power. They do not have an inherent right to represent Hindus, and Hindus who believe in secularism must challenge their claim to authority. We must stand up because what is happening in India is fundamentally unjust, and this injustice is being done in the name of our religion. My final point is that it is important for Hindus to understand that Hindutva is contrary to the core teachings of Hindu traditions, which emphasize ekatva, or oneness, and ahimsa, nonviolence. In the popular bhajan Vaishnava Janato, the medieval Gujarati poet Saint Narsi Mehta tells us that the mark of a truly religious person is that they strive to understand and empathize with the pain of others. Hindu traditions teach us that all religions are equal paths to God, and that every soul is inherently divine. Allowing oppression without opposition is a gross violation of Hindu principles, and as Hindus, it is our dharma, or religious duty, to stand up for religious freedom for the Muslims facing vicious attacks on their faith and personhood. Everyone in the audience today who is a Hindu or who knows somebody who is Hindu, please leave this rally and talk to one person, just one, about what is going on in India today. Try to start that conversation, because hope can only come from dialogue followed by action.
My apologies. I'm in the district and running from one rally to another. It's really important for us to have this conversation to raise awareness in what's happening in India. It is really quite alarming to see so many people being threatened and their lives being at risk just because of their faith. We've seen this play out, as you have just so eloquently talked about throughout history, whether it is because of their faith, because of their race, because of their ethnicity. The othering of your neighbors can be deadly, and words do have consequences, and we've seen what happens when dangerous rhetoric goes unchecked and how that could be very harmful and can lead to deadly violence, even genocide. In regards to the young women who are just fighting for their right to get an education in a world where women and young girls don't have adequate access to education already. It's alarming just because they want to freely practice their faith and wear a symbol of their faith in regards to wearing the hijab. I was raised in a country where when I was little, we were banned from wearing the hijab. And I know that there are others around the world where that is compulsory for them. And so allowing young girls and women to freely choose what they do with their bodies and how they decide to show up in the world is something that I fundamentally think it's important. So when we're seeing people standing up for women who do not want to wear the hijab, it's also important that we see women and men around the world standing up for those who do want to wear it. And so I commend my sisters in India who are bravely fighting against the mob, fighting against authorities, fighting against institutions for their religious right to wear the hijab. And I join and congratulate the envoy for religious liberties here in the United States in his strong condemnation of what is happening in India. And I, will continue to push for the government in India to course correct. I introduced the legislation to create an envoy to monitor and combat Islamophobia. And I used India and China as an example of what's happening to Muslims and the kind of anti-Muslim hate that is spreading in both of those countries, and how that's creating difficulties for Muslims to live a dignified life. And we know what happened in Bosnia. We know what happened in Burma to the Rohingyas. And right now we are seeing the warning signs. And if we do not act, we will find ourselves in a place where we will feel ashamed that we didn't speak as forcefully as we could in condemning these actions. I think, the world can easily talk about upholding religious liberty. They can talk about minority rights, but they have to be able to forcefully stand up for those rights. And I believe that I have a role in Congress. My colleagues have a role in Congress, and the U.S. government has a role in trying to make sure that the religious liberties of Muslim minorities in India is protected and uplifted.
It's a real privilege and an honor to be with you today. And so I wanted to focus my remarks around solidarity across religions, and especially to encourage my sisters and brothers who are not of the Ummah, but who stand in solidarity like I do, to speak out on behalf of the rights, not just of Muslim girls, to wear the hijab, because I think the big misnomer is this is about what we put on, what not to wear and what to wear. And I think that takes away from the idea that our devotion to God, to Allah, cannot be dictated by people outside, because our commitment comes from within. So just a little background. I practice a form of liberatory Christianity rooted in Jesus' solidarity with all living beings, but with a particular emphasis on those who are forced to the peripheries of society: the poor, the immigrant, the stateless, the dispossessed, the climate refugees, those whose land has been stolen, and those adherents of any religion, or people of no religion at all, but especially of religious folks who might find themselves in the minority in the places where they live. In honor of the Jesus who proclaimed peace, who pronounced prisoners free, who canceled debts, who esteemed the poor, as the models that we are to follow, I wore the hijab in what I called embodied solidarity with my Muslim sisters throughout the Christian season of Advent in 2015 and 2016, in the aftermath of the San Bernardino attacks. And if you recall, this is the rise of candidate Donald Trump, who literally announced 2 days before I began wearing the hijab in solidarity with Muslim sisters, that he would institute a Muslim ban if he became president of the US. Because we worship, like I said, because we worship the same God. God is Allah. For the Abrahamic religions, we are one. We are siblings worshiping the same God. The beginning of racial and ethnic division, as you will recall, what early scientists called the Great Chain of Being, the purveyors of the idea that dark-skinned people, Black people in the US, slaves at the time, Dalits in India, wherever in the world, begins with the misinformation about the descendants of Ham, It's patently racist, it's patently anti-Islamic, it's patently hateful. Promulgating white Christian religious supremacy when actually we know that no religion, no one religion is supreme. No way of worshiping the creator and the creation is supreme. And as I said, as Abrahamic siblings, we worship the same God. It is in the same spirit that I wore the hijab on February 1st, on World Hijab Day, in concert with other hijabis, Muslim sisters, and along with many friends of other religions and no religions at all around the globe. And also, I wanted to point out, especially as a political scientist, the ways that in the past, India has been a hallmark of religious coexistence throughout history. In the United States, religious freedom is the founding virtue of the US Constitution. It's Article 1, freedom for religion, freedom from religion, both the ability to practice our deepest held commitments, but also for governments not to impose any particular kind of religion. I also want to point out that the time that we find ourselves in, we see various progressive movements that are almost predicating their existence on being religious, anti-religious, contrary to religion, even on the liberal left in the United States. But being in, as we know, pushing against France's bans on the hijab and against hijabis and those who wear the burqa, that secular states can still be committed to women, and especially when we're talking about women in the hijab, continuing to actually embody the dictates of their closest and deepest held beliefs and values. And I think that in thinking about the context of the moment that we're in, there's not just a rise of fascism in India, the rise of fascism in Europe, the rise of fascism in the United States. And I think one of the reasons that we are in a more powerful position, we are not operating from a position of fear.
I've been writing for about 20 years for the Globe and Mail, and I encourage all of you, we don't use the pen anymore, we use our keyboards, but you can educate the wider public about what is happening in India by writing letters to the editor, to your local newspaper, to your national newspaper, writing an op-ed. We had an excellent example of that just yesterday with Taha Ghayur. I think he's on this call as well. That was published in the Globe and Mail, which was very principled and really went beyond just Muslims. It was, as our previous speaker said, it really spoke to the humanity and the abuse of human rights in India going on. So I would really recommend that if you have any inclination to write, get a group of you. And write different letters. Look up your local newspapers, letters to the editor, contact information, and start sending letters in just to educate people. Not all of you get published, but the idea is to get the information out there, and people do read. So that's to educate the wider public. That's one step. In Canada, right now, there are a number of avenues that people who would like to make a difference can, and that would involve political lobbying. So there are two fronts for that in Canada. Number one, Canada is on the verge of signing a free trade agreement with India, and our minister responsible for that is Mary Ng. She's located in Toronto. I think it's very important for those of us who are concerned about the deteriorating situation in India to contact their local MP, to raise these concerns in Parliament and to convey them to Minister Ng, and also to make sure that Canada does include human rights before signing trade deals with nations which violate them. That's one. Our Foreign Affairs Minister, Chrystia Freeland, has made it very clear that Canada has a, quote, feminist foreign policy. And you can go to her website, the Foreign Affairs website, how feminism and the rights of women and girls are paramount to Canada's foreign policy. And this is, again, where we can make a difference by writing to our MPs, writing to Minister Freeland's office, emphasizing that Canada should practice what it preaches by expressing its strongest concerns about what is happening in Karnataka and elsewhere in India with regards to the denial of girls and women to the right to education. Malala Yousafzai has already spoken up against this, and this is another powerful reference or source that we can have. It's very important that we really let our elected politicians know that where we stand and how Canada's reputation and principles are at stake if Canada turns a blind eye to what is happening in India right now.
First of all, I am going to talk about the spiritual or, strength that we have to be building while we are fighting, because we are all some sort of activists, social justice activists. To be a social activist, we need to believe. We need to believe in an ideal. As a Muslim woman, as a practicing Muslim woman, I believe in God. I believe in Allah, the only one. So while I write letters, while I stand up in front of Prime Minister office, while I am contacting the MP, I still, in the back of my mind, believe in Allah, because my work is going to have even more better meaning, a powerful meaning, when we believe that at the end of the day, we do all this for the sake of Allah, with the strength of Allah. Like Sister Muskan Khan said, Allahu Akbar. She confronted this mob, she confronted these angry, toxic men with just 2 words, Allahu Akbar. So I would like to bring 3 verses from the Quran, from the Holy Book. And it's from chapter of the spider, Surah Al-Ankabut, the spider. It's a beautiful, beautiful surah. And it starts with those 3 verses. And I think it is time to go back and read them, because this is where we can find the strength in order to call the MPs, in order to write to them, in order to continue this difficult. And let's be clear here, and let's not really fool ourselves. It is discouraging, this work. It is difficult. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Surah Al-Ankabut, Alif, Lam, Mim, those 3 letters, start with those 3 letters, Alif, Lam, Mim. Do the people think that they will be left to say, we believe, and they will not be tested? So Allah asked this rhetorical question. Do the people think that they will be left to say, we believe, and they will not be tried? But we have certainly tried those before, and Allah will surely make evident those who are truthful, and He will surely make evident the liars. Those are important verses. Please take some time to read them, because it is about trials, it is about tests, it is about the one who see the truth and the one who do not see it, unfortunately, the one who distort the truth and the one who wants to find it. So I think it is important, whenever we commit or whenever we take any action here to help our sister, our friends, whether they are in India, whether they are in France, the hijabers who cannot play soccer, whether we are in Quebec, those women who cannot be teacher or cannot be police officer. Of course, there are degrees of Islamophobia, but all of this, it is hard. It is hard on our spirit. It is our heart or our body, and we need consolation. We need some sort of support. And I wanted to share these words from God with you to support you, to give you strength, and to feel that, well, this is another trial. It is difficult. I know when you cannot go to school, because I have been myself prevented to go to school because I wear hijab. I was born and raised in Tunisia, and during the 80s and the 90s, and it is Muslim country. It has nothing to do with being a Muslim country or a non-Muslim country. Someone spoke about, I think, secularism and how secularism is being used against women who decide to have to follow, and wear hijab. It was indeed the same case. It happened to me. I was prevented. I was asked by the principal or the director of the institute, of the Business Institute I was attending in 1992 or 91, she actually asked me with two other girls, we were three girls wearing a hijab at that time, and she said, within the next week, you cannot come in and attend the way you are dressed. And we left that meeting and we took the train because our institute was far from downtown. And we were talking together, three Muslim girls who were saying, what are we going to do? Are we going to just not stop going? It was our last year. We needed to attend the classes in order to prepare for our exam. And we said, we are not going to go. We are going to still hold on our hijab. And hopefully, they never prevented us. We were a small school, far away from really the politics, and then they never enforced that new rule. However, it was enforced, and many girls removed their hijab, and many girls were prevented from their job. And even when I arrived to Canada, I had a hard time entering university. Islamophobia has been always here, and it is going, unfortunately, to stay with us. So whatever we need the strength. We need, as someone mentioned from the beginning, we need allyship. We need networking. We need supporters from people who maybe are not necessarily Muslim, but would fight with us to keep our principle and to be able to practice whatever we think appropriate and whatever we believe in. I know many of us thought sometimes to let it go and maybe remove the hijab and maybe, be like a normal whatever person. But what is normal? What is normal, right? What can we qualify of normal and not normal? I think at the end of the day, it is important to believe that if you take a decision to wear a hijab, everybody should support that decision, even those who maybe do not think that it is the best one or they believe in it. So I think today it is important that we stand up in solidarity with those young women, because the hijab is the tip of the iceberg. Today it is the hijab, tomorrow it's your color, and then the next day it's going to be your name, and then after that, without really realizing, it's going to be we don't like you, then we are going to kill you. So I think it's not really about the hijab, even though it shows that it is about that, but it is about dehumanizing the others and making the other look like some sort of, an animal or less than a subhuman, less than a human, that would allow, to do whatever, to target them with violence and to exclude them from the public sphere. So let's here take this moment to reflect upon the situation in India, but also the situation in France, the situation in Quebec, the situation in many other countries where women cannot be and cannot really be themselves, because this is gendered Islamophobia. It's not only Islamophobia, but it's targeting women because they think that Muslim women are weak, they are oppressed, so they can take whatever oppression, even if it is from other groups and other communities. So it is very important to stand in solidarity with those women, with those brave women who are really fighting for their basic right to go to school, to get an education, and to just be themselves.